something terrible has happened. Yes, Trump has awakened. Somehow it finally dawned on him that Putin is seriously ill and that the tools of politics and diplomacy are not applicable for solving the Russian question. The usual standard tools, he called the way Trump put it, he called the Kremlin's Führer a mad, sick maniac, and in doing so, offered the whole world a clear and simple explanation for the current nightmare that is unfolding. There is no doubt that this particular interpretation, Putin is insane, will now become the generally accepted and operative one, because firstly, it is very convenient, it is universal, and it gives everyone free rein. Donald, in general, still has many remarkable discoveries ahead of him as he delves deeper into the issue that Trump has taken up. He will also have to figure out how it happened that 140 million people turned into the service staff of a single madman. Once he understands this, and it is possible to understand even just by watching a few extracts, Trump will finally grasp what Russia really is. And at that point, that's when old Trump will curse the day he once again became president of the United States of America. For the gravity of solving the Russian question is, of course, unimaginable. And there will be no way to stall, dodge, or hide from this decision, from reality. History will not forgive him for that, nor will the states. All this further chatter about friend Vladimir reeks of indelible shame and complicity in genocide. Moreover, it must be said that Trump, as it immediately turned out after he spoke these words, is by no means alone. Oh, psychiatrists started crawling out of the woodwork, those who had been fearfully silent until the moment when thoughts and suspicions about a sadistic personality disorder were off limits, until Trump himself voiced them. By the way, I'd like to remind you that I talked about this a long time ago. But in any case, the whole story turns out to be funny, like Golostyan's cremation. But as we know, there's another hole through which you can always peek into the Kremlin's secrets. There's the handsome Medvedev. And Medvedev has shared his dreams here, showing which pieces of Russia Ukraine would supposedly like to get. Medvedev is always remarkable because he is the eternal hole through which all the secretions of Russian state policy constantly ooze out. All the pus from the diseased Kremlin brain seeps through this hole. This greatly simplifies diagnosis and makes it possible to determine the current state of the processes taking place under the Kremlin's ruby stars. But for the whole world, for everyone, Demon Medvedev has become a little window through which you can peek under the bald spot of the Russian Führer. Whatever is happening inside the dictator's Scully's desires, dreams, plans, and fantasies, Medvedev very recklessly voices them out loud. A huge thank you to him for that. Of course, this poor devil Medvedev will get himself into trouble sooner or later, because the generals of the General Staff, the FSB, the Presidential Administration, and the Federal Protective Service will eventually give Medvedev a beating in a Kremlin restroom, possibly badly damaging his face and crushing his testicles. But for now, the generals are dragging their feet, and that's why everything's secret becomes clear. Well, now it's kind of obvious, there's no doubt that Ukraine is, well, practically a mental illness for Russia. Russia's feelings toward Ukraine are the pain of a rejected stalker, a maniac who has gone mad over the object of his obsession. And since he can't have her completely, he dreams, I don't know, at least of cutting off her legs, flaying the skin off her back, her buttocks, so he can weep over them at night. But really, Well, all these desires of Russia have no other purpose. As was recently stated by the leaders of the DPR, who announced that no one is planning or wants to rebuild anything. All these regions are needed by Russia only to burn everything down, pile up the corpses, and then turn it into a museum of war, ruined smiles of death and destruction. And indeed, in this maniacal thirst to seize regions of Ukraine, there is just as much pathology as in the rest of the Kremlin's psychosis. Everything is completely rational, but to each their own. The history of criminology and psychiatry is full of examples of exactly this kind of fetishism. The most striking example, just off the top of my head, is, of course, Winnie, who cut off a lady's hand. He proposed to her and she rejected him. Winnie cut off her hand and used it for self-gratification for a long time. Severed. There are countless examples. It's tiresome, of course. One could have avoided recalling this filth because, honestly, to hell with these perverts. But it's not my fault at all that the history of humankind is full of such freaks. And by the way, I actually gave the most decent example of them all. And Russia, I must say, demonstrates roughly the same kind of irrational behavior. It is already clear to everyone that she will never get Ukraine in its entirety. And this political fetishism would sever with the cutting off of regions for self-gratification looks no better than the story of Winnie. Indeed, if the Kremlin truly needs anything, it's just massive doses of chlorpromazine. There's something utterly vile in all of this, and the illness is becoming more and more apparent. All these so-called special military operation ghouls will come to realize that they died not for something, not for the motherland, but for someone's hypophrenia. Now it's clear that this pain over Ukraine is fatal, all-powerful, and manic. It truly is the feeling of a lovesick person, someone who's lost their mind over the object of their obsession. But in a way, it's a very romantic story. As for the idea that Putin is insane, well, that particular phrasing, as they say, is definitely going to catch on. And the word insane, deranged, when applied to Putin from this day forward, is now fully legitimate. Moreover, it's becoming more and more obvious, clearer, stronger, and more painful to Trump that the Kremlin patient is also mocking him in a sophisticated way, and treats the President of the United States as what they call, as they say, a dumb yank, whose head is only good for chewing gum, sporting a yellow comb-over, and as a place to apply self-tanner in the spots where there's no hair. Yes, so what? Trump said it all. He said that Putin is playing with fire, that Putin doesn't understand that if it weren't for me, Trump, a lot of very bad things would have already happened to Russia. I mean very bad things, said Trump. He's playing with fire, but at least that's something already. This is a significant and direct stated threat, a warning.